So you've started a nonprofit. You've gone through all the paperwork, you did the hard work, and you finally got your 501c3 status from the IRS. Awesome. But what if I told you there's this other kind of obscure classification that acts as a huge gatekeeper to the funding you need? Today, we're breaking down the critical difference between being a public charity versus a private foundation.
Picture this. You pour your heart and soul into the perfect grant proposal. Your mission is incredible. Your plan is solid. You send it off, you're excited, and then you just hear crickets. Nothing. So what's the number one reason a funder might just toss your application aside without a second look? Well, it probably has nothing to do with your mission at all, and everything to do with a little classification you might not even know you have. You see, right after you get that amazing 501c3 status, the IRS gives you this secondary label. It's quiet. It's often just a single line of text tucked away in your official determination letter, but believe me, it acts as a critical gatekeeper to most of the grants out there. This isn't just some boring administrative detail, it's a fundamental piece of your entire fundraising puzzle. And here's what trips up so many founders. This gatekeeper, this classification, it doesn't care one bit if you're saving the planet or creating incredible art. The difference between being a public charity or a private foundation isn't about what you do. It is purely a financial question based on one thing and one thing only. Where does your money come from? All right, so let's get right to the heart of it. What are these two categories? It all comes down to public versus private. And trust me, understanding this is the key that can unlock your nonprofit's fundraising potential. First up, the public charity. This is what most of us think of when we hear the word nonprofit. It's an organization that gets its money from a whole bunch of different places. Individual donations from the general public, government grants, maybe even charging for some of its services. The key word here is broad support. And on the complete flip side, you have the private foundation. This is pretty much the exact opposite. A private foundation gets the bulk of its money from a very narrow, very concentrated source, like a single wealthy person, one family, or one company. Think of the big names like the Ford Foundation or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's the classic model. So let's just boil it all down. If you remember absolutely nothing else from this, remember this slide. A public charity is supported by many. A private foundation is supported by one. That's it. This fundamental divide is what changes everything. Okay, so now we know the difference, but why should you care? More importantly, why do the big grant-making institutions, the very places you want to get money from, care so deeply about this? Well, let's just say they have a very clear favorite. Reason number one, it's all about taxes. That's a huge motivator for donors, right? When someone gives cash to a public charity, they can deduct up to 60% of their adjusted gross income. That is a massive, massive incentive to give, and to give generously. Now compare that to a private foundation. If that very same donor gives that same money to a private foundation, their deduction gets slashed in half, down to just 30%. For major donors, we're not talking about small change here. That difference could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can see right away why public charities have a huge fundraising advantage. And it's not just about what the donors want. Foundations themselves would much rather give to public charities. Why? Well, for one, giving money to another private foundation triggers all these super complex IRS rules called expenditure responsibility. It's a bureaucratic nightmare they really want to avoid. Plus, when a funder sees you have broad public support, it's like a stamp of approval. It tells them the community already believes in you. And honestly, it's just way simpler paperwork for them. The impact of this little classification goes way beyond just applying for grants. It actually changes the rules of the game for you every single day. It affects your daily operations in some really significant ways. This table really lays it all out. Look at this. If you're a public charity, no excise tax on your investment income. But if you're a private foundation, you're paying a 1% to 2% tax on it. Public charities don't have a requirement to spend a certain amount each year, but private foundations, they have to give away about 5% of their assets every year. And there it is again at the bottom. Public charities can apply for most grants, while private foundations have very limited eligibility. The rules are just tougher and way more complex on the private foundation side. Okay, so at this point, you're probably thinking, I get it, this is a big deal, so which one am I? Well, the good news is finding out is actually pretty straightforward. Let's walk through exactly how you can check your status right now. First things first, you gotta find that official IRS determination letter. The one they sent you when you were first approved as a 501c3. That document is everything. Now, in that letter, look for the specific section that talks about your public charity status. If you are a public charity, it will say so right there, and it will list a code like Section 509A1 or 509A2. And this right here is the most critical piece of the puzzle. The IRS does not mess around with this. The default status for any 501c3 is private foundation. So if your letter does not specifically say you are a public charity under Section 509A something, then by default, you're a private foundation. It's that simple and that important to know.
And all of this leads to one final, really important question you need to ask yourself. Now that you understand the difference and you know how to check your own organization's status, is your fundraising strategy actually aligned with your IRS status? Because let me tell you, building a strategy around getting grants when you're classified as a private foundation, that's like trying to unlock a door with the totally wrong key. Your status is the key, and you've got to make sure your strategy fits it perfectly.